and I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb, most regular season receiving yards. This is plus 750 on ESPN Bet. I went 1.5 units. You can get him if you're using DraftKings or FanDuel. You can get him about 7-1 on those books. Found a little bit more of a value over on ESPN. But the Cowboys offense just gotten so much worse this season, folks. Like, losing Tony Pollard, they bring back Zeke, lost several key linemen, so I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball necessarily. And aside from CeeDee Lamb, it's Brandon Cooks, you got Jake Ferguson, Jalen Tolbert, who's a 2022 third rounder.
Deuce Vaughn out of the slot.
Yeah, you got all Deucey out of the slot. But you got Jalen Tolbert, who's apparently going to be the wide receiver 3 here and going to be a starter. Only has 24 receptions in 2 years. Other than that, Eric, like, it's guys you legitimately don't even fucking know who they are. And you and I could probably go back and forth and name 200 receivers in the NFL. And these guys are all day 3 undrafted wide receivers, not going to be on that list. They're going to have to lean on CeeDee every which way this season. And already last season in the NFL, CeeDee Lamb, number 1 in targets, 181, number 1 in receptions, 135, number 2 in yards, 1749, right behind Tyreek Hill, 3rd in touchdowns, 12. And Dallas, like, last year, I think, like, they had some pretty shitty game scripts from a fantasy standpoint. Remember early in the year, we were like kind of fucking hitting the panic button on CeeDee and some of these Dallas Cowboys. But this offense is going to be against other good out of division offenses this year. Some of those matchups include Baltimore, Detroit, the 49ers, the Atlanta Falcons, if they're going to be improved, Houston, Tampa Bay. So, like, they're not going to be fucking steamrolling everyone by 50 every single week this year. Better game scripts, less competition for CeeDee Lamb. Any reason you don't like this bet here, Eric?
No, actually, I love it, if I'm being candid, right? And a lot of it has to do with that price tag, right? He was a couple of receiving yards per game shy of taking down this very award last year. And that was, I mean, that was with a pretty polarized sort of distribution in terms of his productivity over the course of the year, right? Like, he finished the back half of the season like a man possessed, but you look at the beginning of the year, he's got some 36s and 49s and 53s in the mix, right? So, like, if we were to take kind of the back, half of his season and project it out over the course of a full 17 games, he would win this title, this award, finish as the number 1 receiver by a pretty wide margin. And, while we have to worry about Deuce Vaughn sneaking into some of his slot snaps, the reality is, like, he is going to be a target funnel in this offense, right? Like, Brandon Cooks is still kicking around, sure. Ferguson's out there, much more of like a red zone kind of underneath type of target. So,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, from what we know of the Cowboys, he is easily going to be one of the most heavily targeted receivers in the league, and he was right on the cusp of doing this last year. So, if I had to set the market on this, I would probably set the market at like 375 plus 400, something like that.
With him being the favorite?
750. With I would probably still put Tyreek Hill as the favorite, but they would be much closer in odds, right? I'd probably have Tyreek Hill at like 250, 300, and have CeeDee Lamb at like 370, 400 kind of range.
They feel like the heavy favorites to me. Tyreek feels like the person who could beat CeeDee the most. Yeah. Like Justin Jefferson at 11-1, Puka at 14-1. Like, you could maybe convince me. Like, Jay Jet specifically at 11-1, I think might be my favorite other value on this board here. But yes, CeeDee Lamb, he's my favorite in that market. Any other thoughts on the player prop season stat leader market before we shift to some other bets we like here, Eric?
Yeah, I'll stay in this market, and I will. I was going to say I would go against you in terms of your pick, but really it's more of a secondary consideration, right? Looking at the most receiving yards market, Garrett Wilson jumps out to me at plus 1,600. This is a number that I would put a full unit down on. Look, the reality is, like, the type of production he was able to put up last season with the absolute carousel of spare part quarterbacks that were out there was commendable, right? Like, yes, he didn't have a phenomenal season from a receiving yard standpoint. He finished number 22 overall with just over 1,000 yards, but he was number 10 in the league in terms of air yards. He's number 3 in the league in terms of air yard share. And then you start looking at some of his, his advanced metrics around the quality of his targets. Number 65 among qualified receivers in catchable target rate, right? Like his
Ouch.
true catch rate, 83% relative to his
Yep.
actual catch rate of 56.5%, right? So like, some of this is, just nowhere to go but up. But realistically, if we are bullish on Aaron Rodgers being able to return to, the Aaron Rodgers that we mostly know him to be for the majority of the season, Garrett Wilson's upside is absolutely as high as the leading wide receiver in the NFL next year. So to get that at 16-1, that's definitely the type of bet that I would like to speculate on alongside that CeeDee Lamb bet, which really underscores a point we should have brought up earlier. You don't have to plant your flag on one player in any of these bets, right? Like you should
Certainly.
very much so build a portfolio so that you can hedge against yourself down the road, or you can find other ways to leverage off of your exposure, right? So those two bets combined would be a really interesting way to start attacking this particular market.
Garrett Wilson feels like one too. If he comes out hot early in the season, he start picking up a little bit of momentum with Aaron Rodgers. That could be a cash out. That could
Could
be a
be.
cash out, and you could still be holding that CeeDee Lamb ticket, or if you prefer to go with like a Tyreek Hill or someone like that. So love the call out here as well from you, Eric.